is Laurel. I'm an environmental science and sustainability major. And I'd say that I have a pretty strong background in Standard American English.
What is Standard American English? Standard American English is the dialect form of English that is taught to us from the beginning of our academic careers, the dialect form that we find from our primary education to secondary education and into the professional world. But where does it come from? It's derived from how Northeast white upper or middle class Americans speak, those who, at its advent, were the ones allowed to be in academic and professional settings, thus leaving out almost every minority group out of the conversation. Standard American English is touted as the gold standard of how American English should look and sound, which has allowed it to bulldoze and disregard the use of African American Vernacular English, or AAV, Chicano English, or Spanglish, primarily spoken by Spanish-speaking immigrants, as well as any other dialect that can be found across the United States. It is commonly written off as racial inequity, which is a large part of the issue, but not the full issue. The problem goes deeper than that. When we consider that Southern American dialects are not included in conversations of Standard American English, we see that the issue goes beyond just that of racial inequality. But we'll discuss these ideas later. Let's get back to Laurel.
Both of my parents have advanced degrees, so that kind of language was really common in my house growing up. And then also throughout my primary education, it was something that I was just surrounded by.
Okay.
I'd say that it has benefited my ability to grow just because it's a lot easier for me to access the readings that I need to. I'm able to more quickly digest what I'm reading because I'm already familiar with the language being used. I'm able to easily skim what I'm going through and pick out what's important and kind of go bypass the fluff words. I'd say that the uniformity that it provides is good for the scientific community just because it gives a standard for everyone to kind of comply with. Everything has a certain way that it should be written, so it gives almost a rubric for how your paper should look. It's easier to figure out how to structure your papers. I'd say that most of the time, yes. There's some pop culture words that I'll use when I'm speaking casually with my friends, but most of the time I'd say that I do speak within the conventions. Yeah, I'd say definitely it fits it better because that's really the only setting that it's always used. That's where it fits. I don't think so, probably because I make a point to read a lot of fiction as opposed to only nonfiction scientific works. Also, one of my main hobbies is writing, creative writing, so I'd be really sad if that was something I lost my skills in. So I make a point to keep my ability to do creative writing.
Thank you so much for your time. Standard American English has clear uses in the areas it was meant to serve, but the term that has been given is not indicative of the purpose and has stood to create further linguistic divide. But how does this impact those left out of conversations about Standard American English, those who are less familiar with its conventions before reaching higher education, or those who do not speak a dialect of English that employs those similar structures and conventions? A study conducted by Jan Nesbitt shows that students with less experience with Standard American English, who are also more likely to utilize AAV while writing, score disproportionately lower than their white peers, not only on English assessments, but score lower on assessments in almost every other class. This is due to the fact that they have a lower understanding on how to read and write in Standard American English, and the schools that they are at are not equipped with the tools to ensure that they fully understand these conventions prior to state-mandated assessments. This sets the standard for these students exponentially low and minimizes their chance for further success in higher academic settings. This could be due to a myriad of other factors as well, but chief among them is their lack of understanding in Standard American English and the notion that it sets up that any other form of English that a person uses is less than or not as valuable as. We can also see a similar trend happening amongst those who speak Chicano English and Spanglish, which are dialects of English spoken by Spanish-speaking immigrants that are learned and passed down from parent to child, a community-based language where your location is primarily key factor in the dialect of Chicano English that you would hear and speak. A Chicano speaker from the West Coast would sound quite different when compared to a Chicano English speaker from the East Coast. You see these trends amongst other dialect groups as well, and through these trends we can see how scales are tipped in favor of middle to upper class suburban white people who are more likely, based on location, to speak in a dialect similar to Standard American English. We do not see similar trends in those speaking what is considered queer English, as that is a more superlocal dialect, which means that location is not ancillary to the speaking of the dialect. Thus, anyone from any English-speaking locale could learn and speak queer English. With it being considered a learned dialect, we do not see these trends, as many of the speakers of the dialect have a primary dialect that queer English is added on to, and anything that kind of follows these trends is mostly chalked up to the employment of a previously discussed dialect like AAV or Spanglish or Chicano English. But we have to also consider the fact that queer English is seen as a relatively new dialect group compared to that of AAV, Chicano English, or Spanglish, so there is less data when it comes to the impact of its separation from Standard American English conventions. The clear conclusion is that Standard American English disproportionately impacts those who speak minority English dialects, not only in test scores from the start of their academic career, where they are made to learn a dialect of English completely foreign to them, and are in essence made to believe that the dialect form that they speak have lesser value than that of Standard English.